Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about Federalist number 10, so let's get right to it. Alright, so Federalist number 10 is a hugely important document. In fact, in AP Gov world, it might be the most important document besides the Constitution. Now let's start with a little background information real quick. We know that the Federalist Papers were written in support of the Constitution, so James Madison here will be arguing in favor of ratifying the Constitution. He's going to be explaining why this new Constitution and the stronger central government will lead to good results. This puts it in direct contrast with Brutus number 1, which hopefully you've already watched that video and considered that document. So what's Federalist number 10 specifically about? Really, it's about one main thing. It's about the problem of factions. And spoiler alert, before we even talk about what factions are, I'm going to tell you Madison's solution. Federalist number 10 argues that a larger public is the best way to control the negative effects of factions. And this is the first sentence of Federalist number 10, and notice exactly where it goes. He says one of the best things about this new union is that it will break and control the violence of faction. I don't know much, but when he says violence of faction, I know that that doesn't sound good. So the question is, well, what's a faction? Well, I'm glad you asked. Madison in the next paragraph gives us his definition, and on the screen you see my definition, which is hopefully a little bit more helpful to a modern reader than Madison's. When we talk about factions, we mean a group of citizens that are united by some common interest or purpose, and then notice the ending, that purpose is adverse to the rights of other citizens. And obviously I took inspiration from Madison when it comes to my definition. Madison says that factions are a number of citizens, and he points out this could be a majority or a minority, and that they are united by some common interest. And the important thing is what we're worried about is not just any group of people, but rather those with an interest that is adverse to the rights of other citizens. Okay, so what can we do about it? Well, Madison is a super thorough guy, so before he tells us his solution, he's going to walk us through several things that won't work. Again, spoiler alert, when Madison finally does unveil his big reveal, it's going to be that a larger public is the best way to control the negative effects of factions. I'm going to say that enough times that you'll have to remember it even when the video's over. So the first potential solution that Madison identifies as a non-starter is removing the causes of factions. So he begins by saying that there's two ways to control this problem. One is to remove the causes of factions, and the other is to control the effects of factions. And then he goes on to say that there's two ways that you could remove the causes of factions. The first way is to destroy liberty. The other way is to give everybody the same opinion. Now I ask you, do either of those sound like good solutions to you? Madison goes on to say that when it comes to destroying liberty, that's worse than the problem. So we would rather have liberty and be free and have the problem of factions than have no factions and have no liberty. So that solution doesn't work. Then you think about the second one, is it realistic to give everybody the same opinion? Again, that just isn't realistic, so that's not going to work either. So if we can't remove the causes of factions, we're only left with one possibility. It's going to be about controlling the negative effects. And again, we see why this is difficult. Madison says that the causes of factions are sown in the nature of man, meaning that it's natural. People are always going to form groups with other people. They're going to find people who are similar to them, who have similar interests, similar views, similar hobbies, whatever it might be. It's natural. So we're brought to the conclusion that the only relief when it comes to this problem of factions is going to be controlling its effects. So this is a good time to kind of pause and ask the question, well, what are the negative effects of factions anyway? So to Madison, the key thing is making sure that majority factions are unable to oppress minority factions, even if they want to. But how is this possible? Well, Madison says that the majority must be rendered unable to come together and to carry into execution their schemes of oppression. In other words, we simply have to make it impossible for them to carry out their objective. But how do you do that? They're the majority, they have the power, they're going to control government, so how do you stop that majority from doing what it wants to when that's something bad that will harm other people? And this is really the important part. What type of government will best be able to handle that power of majority faction? And really there's only two choices that were being considered: democracies and republics. Now I know that today the word democracy has pretty positive connotation, but that wasn't really true back then. James Madison, most of the framers, not fans of democracy. In fact, Madison goes on to argue that in a democracy, majority factions will tyrannize and oppress minorities. So yeah, he really didn't think highly of democracy. And here we see Madison's argument on just that topic. And Madison here is really talking about direct democracy. He's talking about a society with a small number of citizens who vote directly on policies. And he says that democracies can admit of no cure for the mischiefs of faction. He basically says that there is nothing to check the majority. If you notice, I have it highlighted. He says there is nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party, meaning the minority party. So what's he think will happen? He says democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention. He says that they are incompatible with personal security, with the rights of property, and in general have been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. It is clear that Madison does not think that democracy is a viable option. Now we're ready for the moment of truth. We finally arrived to Madison's unveiling of his solution. So what do you think it is? What's the best way to control the negative effects of faction? Well, if you haven't been sleeping this whole time, you can already say it with me. A large republic is the best way to control the negative effects of faction. And here Madison makes a really clever, interesting argument. He says that in a smaller republic, the smaller the society, again, whether it's a republic or democracy, you're going to have fewer distinct parties, you're going to have fewer different interests, and so you're going to oftentimes have a majority. He says the more frequently will a majority be found of the same party. And that kind of sounds good. That's something that Brutus thought was a good thing, right? If you remember from Brutus, he argued that very same thing. So here, Madison agrees with Brutus, but to Madison, that is not a good thing. He says the more easily they will concert and execute their plans of oppression. So essentially what Madison is saying is that since it's easy to have a majority, it's easy to have a majority that wants to oppress the minority. So that's not good. On the other hand, if you extend the sphere, meaning that you take in more people, have a larger area that's under this government, you'll have a greater variety of parties. You'll have more interests. And then it's less likely that a majority will have that common motive to invade the rights of other citizens. Again, this is a pretty counterintuitive solution. He's saying that to control the problem of factions, the answer is more factions. And with more factions, that will dilute the relative power that each faction has. That will make it less likely that we'll have a majority faction that actually wants to strip away the rights of others and actually be able to carry that into execution. Elsewhere in the paper, Madison also does kind of sing the praises of a Republican form of government. The idea that we will be able to have better representatives, people that are more knowledgeable, people that are wiser, and since they have this higher perspective of what's best for the nation, they would be less likely to oppress minorities than people in a democracy would if they are voting on the policy directly themselves. So here at the end of the essay, again you see the answer. He says he beholds a Republican remedy for the disease most incident to Republican government. Alright, so one more time, say it with me. A large republic is the best way to control the negative effects of factions. And I've added an and this time, and to protect minority rights while maintaining majority rule. Again, that's the goal. Allow the majority to make policy, but don't allow that majority to make policy that would take away minority rights. It's a very, very tough, delicate balance, but that's what Madison's trying to shoot for in Federalist number 10. All right, so in the comments down below, I want you to give me your answer. According to Madison in Federalist number 10, what is the solution to the problem of factions? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, this has been a LaMoney production. Thanks again for watching this video. I hope that it helped. Do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to check out the AP Gov Ultimate Review Packet. It has everything you need to prepare for this AP test. Whether you're cramming for the exam right now at the last minute or you're going throughout the course throughout the year, it has everything you need to get an A in your class, to get a 5 on the AP exam. So make sure to check it out. I'll see you next time.